Hello, this is Robert Capucci, and I'd like to welcome you to a FitPro featured interview. My guest today is nutrition expert Ben Pratt. Ben, first of all, just want to say thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule in this conference and spending a couple of minutes with us.
Yeah, no problem. My pleasure.
One of the things that you advocate with an extreme depth of expertise underneath it is real food.
That's right.
This may seem like a bit of an obvious question, but what do you mean by real food?
I am talking about the kind of food that we would have always eaten for generations. If we were to go back and we look at human history, and probably there's two places we can look at for what has driven our need to eat. For me, first of all, we'd think of, you go down the creationist theory, as in someone created us and put us here on this planet, and the foods that were naturally growing and produced and reared with animals, those foods would be the foods that were designed for us. The other view, which many other people might attribute themselves to, is evolution. And evolution, of course, is survival of the fittest, surviving in an environment where we have evolved to adapt to the foods that are in our own environment. So foods that have existed for a long period of time, really, those are the foods we're talking about that are real foods. Now, if we'd have gone back even just 70 or 80 years ago, we'd have been looking in a supermarket that might have had only 150 or 200 food items. Today, supermarkets have in excess of 20,000, 30,000 food options. Much of that is not real food. It's come about because of processing. So the challenge, I guess, is how does the consumer find what we mean by real food?
So whether you're a creationist or an evolutionist listening to this, that dictates a specific dietary scope that we've gone far beyond.
Indeed.
But I mean, here's what our average client clearly is facing: mass production, extreme availability of one food, really lack of understanding between what a real food is and not a real food. I mean, how many people in our society, if you said real food versus processed food, would clearly understand what you're talking about? They're very busy, they're on the job, they don't know what to look for, and if they do know what to look for, where to get it, and mix it with their schedule, how do you get someone started on that path, and where do you start them? Like, what are a couple of key foods that they would need to start with?
Well, perhaps if we start with something straightforward that most people can relate to, if we started with something like fruit and vegetables, immediately people will go, well, that's a real food. It's been grown, it's a plant. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's the best real food that there is. You know, many vegetables, for example, are grown in environments that are not normal. You know, we can buy many salad vegetables that are grown hydroponically. That means they're literally grown in water basins, and those water basins are drip-fed things like potassium, phosphate, and nitrogen. Now, that's not real soil, that's not a real environment for plants to grow in. And perhaps people can relate. You may have seen in yourself when you go to the supermarket, you can find these huge tomatoes, and they're large, but when you taste them, they're tasteless. Now, one of the reasons that happens is because, just like you and I, if we're hungry and we eat some food that doesn't supply the nutrients we need, we go looking for some more. So humans very much overeat a lot of the time because they don't get the nutrition they need. If a plant doesn't get the nutrition it needs, the roots keep on sucking up water from the soil looking for that nutrition. So if you don't have enough nutrients in the ground or in a hydroponic tank, they grow and grow and grow and swell with water, and therefore they're tasteless. Now, the question is that a real food? In my mind, I would say that's not real food because it hasn't been given a natural food source that it should have had from the soil.
So if we're not apt to go ahead and eat a mutant potato, let's say, what are 2 or 3 foods that are really available, easy to get, and would significantly improve the state of health of our clients that they can start with and expand from there?
Sure. Perhaps one place where if we were looking at foods that were nutrient dense, so foods that are naturally produced and have maximum nutritional value, for me, without a doubt, probably the first one would be liver. Now, I know a lot of people might go, really? We don't really eat a lot of liver today. Many people's tastes and palates don't enjoy
Hannibal
liver.
Lecter does.
Sure. But liver itself, if you go, gram for gram, and you look at the nutritional content, it outweighs many, many foods in vitamin and mineral nutritional value. It is a rich source of so many things that can make such a difference. Perhaps what's happened is that we've become conditioned to believe that that food is an undesirable food. Whereas if we were to speak to our grandparents, many people's grandparents will have eaten liver on a regular basis. So how do we get around that if someone doesn't like the taste of liver? Well, then we look at things like a cod liver oil, which will provide us with many nutrients that can be found in liver, but yet it can be taken in a supplement form. So there are ways around that. And that's not really a supplement, I suppose. For me, that's an oil. It's a real food still. It's just been derived from a liver source. Another food that I would look at would be eggs. The reason being is that people have different metabolisms. Some people's metabolisms may be faster metabolism, some slow, some may be sympathetic dominant on their nervous system, some may be parasympathetic dominant. Now, regardless of what metabolism they have, eggs as a food works well on all those variations of metabolism. It's obviously a good protein food, so it satisfies very quickly, and it's also very rich in many of the nutrients that our bodies need too. So I'd be looking at those as being two very primary foods that can make a big difference in people's lives from a nutritional perspective.
And from there, where can people go to? What were some sources you'd recommend?
Well, I would say, you've got to, I suppose, direct people to a minimum starting point, because to always look for the best of the best can be a challenge. The minimum starting point, I would say, is that we look for organic food as a minimum start point. Now, I spoke with many clients, and many people believe that that's the ultimate objective. I want to get organic food. No, that's the minimum start point. Primarily when we look at organic agriculture, it minimizes some of the bad things that can be added to food, like pesticides, poor farming methods and things like that. And so by buying organic, you're taking away the things that are not so good, and therefore it's less likely to have a detrimental food. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that you've got the best food. So
the general public would be very surprised to hear that, wouldn't they?
Well, I think they would. So if we think about organic, and we think about eggs, as an example we just mentioned there, you can have chickens who are reared in an organic environment who still get fed feed that comes from corn and things like that. Now, corn feed to a chicken is a good way to make a chicken get fat, even if it is an organic chicken. The difference is that if we wanted to have the best, I'd be looking beyond organic. I'd want chickens that lived in a woodland environment, as they traditionally did, that they had the scope to wander on grasslands, to forage for insects. By doing that, the insects provide nutrition to the chicken that make it a healthier chicken and make those nutrients pass into the eggs, and you get better eggs. But if you were to go to an organic free-range mass production farm, you'd often find them outdoors, as they should be, but they'll be on dirt land. Less insect life in that sort of environment, less nutritious chickens, less nutritious eggs. So you can go almost to an obsession level about it, but there are levels in which those nutrients can appear in our food. And really what we're getting at is that we're going back to the way things would have been. Chickens wouldn't have been produced on mass scale with thousands upon thousands in the dirt land free-range area. They would have always lived in woodlands in small flocks, where they would therefore have been healthy, because that was their natural environment.
Ben, very enlightening information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Cheers.